Hey everyone, welcome to Jessistories. This is an exclusive space for everyone. Anyone's welcome. Hate's not really welcome at all. If you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, so is everyone in this series. So this is definitely a safe space. Please like, subscribe, share with a friend, family member, just share with anyone. Help build this channel and make it bigger. Thanks so much for being here. And if you're new here, please like, subscribe, and thanks so much for being here. Here is Shannon. She will introduce herself of what she does.
Hello, hello. I'm glad to be here, Jessi. My name is Dr. Shannon York. I am a queer licensed psychologist, and I work with clients in Florida and Washington State. I primarily help folks retire from people pleasing. That's my specialty.
And could you go a little more into what falls under people pleasing?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the folks that come to see me are finding that they have a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, some depression, because they're not living their life with themselves at the center. What usually happens is you grow up in an environment where you learn what we call like the terms of attachment or the conditions of attachment. And without it being said, you learn that if I show up in X, Y, or Z way, that's how I get the most care and connection from my parent or my caregiver. And when parents and caregivers are not emotionally regulated themselves, you learn a lot that you have to suppress your own experience in order to get the care that you want. And when we translate that all the way into adulthood, we see a lot of stress from just hyper monitoring. Like, how are people feeling? What do they need? Because the best way that these folks have, and myself too, I'm in this category as someone who's retiring from people pleasing, we learn that in order to regulate my own emotions, I have to regulate your emotions. I'm going to feel safe if I can make you feel safe. And that just ain't sustainable. And so I help people figure out how to come back to trusting their own intuition, what they need, and putting their own needs first.
Which is really important because
Mm.
actually people pleasing falls into cults and
Yes,
high control groups and getting in them in the
yes,
first place, since that is
yeah,
ultimately what you're doing. You're pleasing the leaders, the
right.
whether it's one leader, since people think that cults are only big groups that are
Mhm.
in person somewhere. That's a lie. They're
Yeah,
online, they're in politics, they're
yeah.
everywhere. High control groups, you are ultimately, like you said, pleasing. So you are making
Mhm.
sure that person feels better. And they use guilt, like the cult I was in.
Mhm.
Jeff and Shalia use guilt, a big one of,
Yeah.
oh, we can't afford to do this.
Mhm.
Oh, you are just poor slobs that
Mm.
can't get our business running, pretty much.
Mhm.
But yeah, a way a cult does that is sometimes guilt. I'm trying to think of what else they use. Other cults also use finances, so
Mhm.
funds of saying, if you support me in this, I'll give you
Mhm.
this in return.
Yes,
That can be so many.
conditionality. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually something I've noticed in a trend in our current economy
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well,
in administration, since they're
mhm.
making promises that haven't followed through at all. And
Right.
now they're coming up with new promises that they can't even do in the first place because it's not possible.
Yes, yes. And at this, and we are so craving and needing community and safety. And so sometimes when we're in a really vulnerable place, we're willing to take these maybe not so good deals financially, not so good deals interpersonally, because it is really dangerous to be excommunicated from your group. As humans, we cannot survive individually. Even though in this whole like myth and delusion of white supremacy, we're told that we have to be individualistic, bootstraps, etc. You got to do it all yourself. It's absolutely not possible. It's not possible. And so we have to find safety in community. And sometimes we pick communities that are pretty dangerous for ourselves.
And toxic. They
Yes.
can show themselves as everything you crave because of
Yeah.
narration, which I am going to use Twin
Yeah.
Flames Universe as an example, like
Mm-hmm.
the docu-series I was in,
Mm-hmm.
Escaping Twin Flames on Netflix. Like those are, including myself, real life survivors and
Yeah.
victims, depending on how they see themselves. I see
Mm-hmm.
myself as a survivor. That is our voices. We aren't
Mm-hmm.
a docudrama, as they say,
Mm-hmm.
the other side changing the narration
Mm-hmm.
of the truth. If it was a docudrama, then it would be in the drama section and it would be false and not a docuseries.
Right.
And we wouldn't have had to have paperwork proof and we wouldn't have been told and shown by the people that are interviewing us that, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we are checking in with Jeff and Shalia, we're sending this
Mm-hmm.
huge thing to them. And they even tried getting them on the docu-series themselves
Mm-hmm.
to talk and say. So their two-parter on This Is Our Side is just
Mm-hmm.
total BS in my personal opinion, since they had many opportunities, even counting in 2020 when they had Vanity Fair in their household and
Yeah.
talking to them and there.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
like you said,
changing
changing the
narration
narrative. Yes.
is so
Yes.
important to watch for because
Yeah.
that is part of people pleasing. And when
Mm-hmm.
you fall for, which doesn't make you a horrible human being,
Right.
thousands, millions of people daily fall for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dr. Robert Stern, who is a PhD psychologist like you, does specialty in gaslighting. And that is literally changing your perspective of your world. And a lot of high control groups use tactics of changing your world, like saying, oh,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not true.
Yeah.
That side, they're the ones doing it. They do us
Yes.
versus them, but they make the other side the us versus them. That's one of the key things
Yes.
they do. They make the other side look bad. So,
Right.
like, what's been happening with our current administration, the
Mm-hmm.
Republican versus the Democrat. The Democrat keeps on saying we're all for the Republicans. We just wish they would speak up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So getting the false narrative, and
Mm-hmm.
then when the truth comes, it's hard to believe it because the person
Yes.
you're listening to is going to tell you that's a lie. Same thing
Exactly.
happened when Vanity Fair came in 2020. Jeff and Shalia were saying everything. Sarah Berman, who you can check out her interview I had with her
Mm-hmm.
on this channel.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the behind the scenes of that,
Mm-hmm.
and that she even gave them a chance to talk too, and they chose not to
Mm.
do it and called her scum of the earth. So they turn automatically any article that's truth against them. And these
Exactly.
reporters from Vanity Fair and Vice, so Sarah Berman
Mm-hmm.
is Vice now, she's in a higher position as editor right now in something else, but she's still writing articles. They have to do their background check, just like
Yeah.
Netflix isn't going to mess with some legal stuff without having background in
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But when
Yes.
you're in a higher position, misinformation apparently is okay, so I've learned.
Mm. It's so painful to keep seeing it. And what I see when people experience gaslighting, whether it's in a high control environment or in their family, is that they start to lose trust in their own experience. If I feel hurt when my parent says this to me and I say that to them and they say, no, you don't, because I didn't mean it, or you're misinterpreting it, or you're overreacting, then if I hear that thousands of times through my whole lifetime, I have to start believing that, like, I actually don't know what I'm feeling. I actually don't know what's real. And then we outsource our reality checks to other people and
Oh
we
no,
lose
you
so
froze for
much
me.
power. I can hear you now, but you're frozen too.
I don't know if it was my computer or your computer, but you
I
froze.
know. It's a fussy internet day.
A little bit. You were making it to that outsource and then paused.
Yeah, yeah. This idea of like we outsource our perspective of reality, our understanding of that to other people because we no longer trust our own experience. And that puts us in a really dangerous and vulnerable place where we are completely out of power. We have to rely on other people to tell us how we feel, what we think, etc. And it takes a lot of retraining to start to pause and explore what's happening on the inside. What are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What is my body doing? To learn slowly to trust. And you have to have another person who says, I see that too. The thing you're feeling, I see that too. That thing that you experience, I agree with your reality. And that is part of how we have to, again, have community to get out of these high control or invalidating or painful environments by having somebody else say, like, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, no, 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 your experience is real. I get it. I see it.
But
Sometimes that happens
rightfully,
in therapy. Sometimes that happens with good friends or family or a teacher. A lot of times, I think, does that for students early. I imagine you have that positive influence on people in your work.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and at least as of lately, since I've been healing from my own experience too.
Mhm.
Um, I did work with a cultic psychologist when I first got out.
Mhm.
But knowing my triggers and
Yeah.
just being aware of those
Yeah.
And the fact that you can now, I stand up more for my own reality when I hear
Mhm.
someone saying
Yeah.
something different. I go, no, actually it's
Mhm.
true, especially now that misinformation is okay.
Yeah.
And I hear anyone say anything
Mhm.
about high control groups or anything like that, if someone says, well, actually, this isn't true, and there's someone who is more into games or things like that and
Mhm.
probably haven't either experienced it or even
Mhm.
studied or learned anything
Yeah.
about it, I
Yeah.
now start to say, no, actually, it's true. And yeah,
Mhm.
actually, this is exclusive to a high control group. This is
Yeah.
exclusive to, because another thing people seem to have in their head that's misinformation and not
Yeah.
true is you can have a one-on-one relationship known as cultic, which people don't like the word cult. So one-on-one high control group
Mhm.
relationship.
Yeah.
You can have it be a whole group. It can be
Mhm.
cultic and a high control
Mhm.
group. It can be an entire, like you said, family. It can be a
Yeah.
friend. It can
Yeah.
come from anywhere. It's not just a setting of a gathering of people.
Right.
That's how you get, like, my intro into Twin Flames universe was by a stranger who does tarot reading,
Mm.
who I never heard of the concept of twin flames. I didn't even know
Mhm.
that word existed or what
Mhm.
that was. I
Mhm.
learned from her, and she's the one who told me I had found my twin flame, and then introduced me to their book and introduced me to ultimately joining. So it wasn't necessarily like-mindedness, so people are
Yeah.
caught off guard. Other people are just drawn into learning something new. Can be a
Yeah.
draw into a group. And then they play the role of like-mindedness. So
Mhm.
once you learn this topic, whatever it could be, so it can even
Mhm.
just be trains, since people like
Mhm.
to use that with autistic people, which
Mhm.
is not true.
Mhm.
Just putting that
A
out
little
there from an
reductive. Yeah.
autistic point of view. I am
Yeah.
autistic. Like things I'm into, for example, special
Mhm.
interests. I wanted to better educate myself, so I purposely have learned more about high control groups. I've read
Yeah.
books. I've talked to actual people who have dedicated 30 plus, no wait, 50 plus years of their life
Mhm.
to cultic studies,
Yeah.
to understanding how it works, and they themselves have been in it.
Mhm.
So that's like a special interest of mine, and writing is one of mine too. That's why I'm
Mm.
an author.
Mhm.
And I take interest in getting to know names and origins and
Mhm.
backgrounds and places I've never been, understanding that and hearing from people that are actually there.
Yes.
So just
Yes.
autism, so people understand. So I'm just one part of the spectrum.
Mhm.
And yes, I cognitively am technically delayed, but I have been masking all my life. But just examples of taking high control, that is now a special
Mhm.
interest of mine.
Mhm.
I switch, and Pokemon is back to being a special interest of mine,
Mhm.
but that was actually made by, which I think people should learn this, by an autistic male in China whose special
Wow.
interest was animals. And
Oh.
he's the one who ultimately made the empire of Pokemon, so
Wow.
autistic individuals could learn social skills. That's the
Mm.
pure point of Pokemon.
That's so beautiful to hear too, and like what a nice contrast of what we can do in community and care and seeing each other and understanding each other's stories, as opposed to like such a contrast with high control, which is about erasing you, erasing your identity, erasing your story, your reality. It's just, I think so much of the healing is about being seen, it's about being witnessed, it's about being understood. And I think that's a piece of what therapy does, but I also think that we find that in community, that's part of your page is like sharing the story, letting it be seen, and letting other people see themselves in you and like connect in that. I just think that is so necessary to again get out of that self-invalidating bubble.
To get therapy too, for those that need to get out of, like you said, your specialty within people pleasing. And
Mm,
if you are caught up in a group or situation, it's great to have an outside, like most of my life,
mhm,
I've had therapy, whether it's
mhm,
normal PhD
mhm,
psychologist or those who are in the cult realm of
mhm.
ex members who most of the time were ex members themselves.
Right, right.
Um,
You know from
it
that lived experience.
Yeah, and it's good to have that outside perspective that's not a
Yeah.
family member and not a friend,
Yes.
because
Yes.
they don't have the mutual. That's what I appreciate about therapists
Mhm.
and psychologists and
Mhm.
anyone in the field of mental health. That's why
Yeah.
I have my bachelor's degree. I was originally
Mhm.
going for doctors, and psychology is you have that not going to either side perspective, but also
Right.
showing you where you can go and the
Yeah.
possibilities, and still
Yeah.
leaving. Only really bad psychologists will give you a one-way street, but
Amen.
I've had
Yes.
bad psychologists.
Same.
Um, Good ones will give you multiple ones and not tell you
Yeah.
where to go, just
Right.
give you recommendations and
Hmm.
give you book recommendations
Right.
or give you pathway recommendations depending on
Hmm.
your reasons. So people coming to you
Hmm.
for people-pleasing reasons give you direction and possibly getting out of that relationship, possibly
Yeah.
seeing where things aren't working or where there's
Hmm.
triggers on that person's part or your part.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I really like what you said about options and pathways. I think that really ties into what the core of this work is for me, which is about helping my clients learn to trust themselves. And so it can help to reduce maybe the options of like, oh, I could do a
Yeah.
gazillion things. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at three. And then I just want to see like what actually feels right. What do you feel excited about? What makes you feel hopeful? And that's where we rebuild that trust, that intuition, that wisdom by having choice. And for me to say, yeah, I trust you in making that decision. That sounds wise. That sounds thoughtful. Let me help you along the way.
Yes, and that's a healthy way of doing it because
Mhm.
Twin Flames Universe actually uses similar modalities. So that's why I'm
Mhm.
going to bring this up
Mhm.
because they bring choice of because you build apparently your reality.
Mm.
So this is good to take off of because they have taken from actual psychology and made it toxic and
Yes.
bad.
Yes.
But in my personal opinion, they take, so I choose to make my day great, or
Yes.
I choose to keep my job. Those are things
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
apparently can choose in your reality. I'm
Mhm.
trying to think of what else. I choose to be positive, which is actually toxic to always be positive.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Fully
So
agree.
weird. But in reality, choices are multiple choices.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, a toxic one is a one-way street.
Yes.
So saying it's this way and no other way.
Yeah.
So have you heard of the mirror exercise?
No.
No? Okay. Then this is going to be a fun one to do with you.
Mhm.
So this is, yes, there's certain aspects, even Dr. Robert Stern, when I purposely did on her show, asked her,
Mhm.
because I like getting professional opinion. I asked her if it was gaslighting.
Mm.
So you take something in reality that's not
Mhm.
working and you go, so it upsets me. I'm going to use this one. My mom yelled at me.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So you take it, I don't know nouns and pronouns, but apparently you turn that around
Mhm.
onto yourself and go, it
Mhm.
upsets me. I yelled at myself.
Mm.
And then the last step of the mirror exercise is pretty much giving yourself what you need. So whether that's love
Mhm.
or just something.
Mhm.
And then the outcome. So they say it's inner first and then outer. Then
Mm.
it's supposed to show in your reality. And 100% of the followers believe this, and it's BS.
That like
But
hurts my heart to hear you even say it. I'm like having such a reaction. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like
yeah,
that's
point out
not.
what's wrong with it. That would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me is the self-blame. That is so wildly unhelpful. Wildly unhelpful. Painful, stops all growth, stops perspective taking, puts us in a shame spiral. We can't grow out of a shame spiral. Ew, gross. Ew, gross.
Thank you.
What I often do, I love woo-woo, I love mystical, spiritual. I'm a psychedelic therapist. I do ketamine treatments with clients. And I like the idea of manifesting, but I think it gets weaponized against people because it ignores context. Hello, we're like, if you're in the US, you're living in a crumbling democracy that is extremely exploitative with the wealth gap, the highest it's been in ages.
Yeah.
And if we're just like, I want to be rich, so I will. Like it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then we blame people for not manifesting that while we're not looking at the context. This is especially painful for people who are in targeted, marginalized groups, people of color, people in the global majority, queer folks, trans folks now more than ever. immigrants, documented or not, because again, you're shaming people who have been systematically, intentionally targeted and disadvantaged, and you're saying that's your fault. That sounds like gaslighting to me. Ew. No,
Yep.
thank you.
Actually, Dr. Robert Stern, she brought up at least that same little portion too.
Yeah.
I know since it was her show, she didn't want to go fully on, so I'm hoping on here she goes a little further in depth,
Yeah.
but I still have to rewrite her questions. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that. Yay, that's
Mhm.
validating for me too, actually,
Mhm. Yeah.
honestly.
A lot of
Um,
the work I do in session is helping to redistribute responsibility. Okay, yeah, I have this much responsibility, but maybe it's 30%. And maybe 60% is the country I live in and the policies I live under. Maybe a percentage, I can't do the math because I don't know how many is left, but maybe a percentage also is belongs to my family and their parents and their parents and their parents and how they learned all of these ways to be in relationship with people. And it's really about undoing the self-blame and then getting to the place of like, okay, there is some part that I have agency over that I can do something about, but it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person or that I'm not trying hard. But nobody wants to suffer. Nobody's choosing that. Be like, hope today sucks. Like, that's my choice. Ew, like, we're not doing
no.
that. We
Just
all want
like,
to be well.
well, yeah, like something that's resurfacing that I haven't heard. I only heard recently from my grandma and a couple other people, um, in my life is apparently you choose to be gay, which is just not
Oh,
true. I've brought
mm,
up saying there's a difference, thanks to the cult I was in. I can
mm-hmm,
definitely tell the difference.
mm-hmm,
There's a difference between choice and feelings. Like the cult I was
mm-hmm.
in combined both, so that screws you up in general.
Yep, yep,
But they are two very different things and
very.
they play very different roles in reality.
Yeah.
So if someone is sad
Mm-hmm,
because of words you used, then
mm-hmm,
yes, there's some agency you have there.
mm,
But
yeah.
there's also a core to why they're feeling sad that maybe you triggered
Yes,
something and weren't aware of
yes,
it. And that's where
yes.
conversation comes into place.
That
But
is
when you're
it.
doing, like, for example, the mirror exercise, you
Mm-hmm.
lose perspective of whose fault is here. Sometimes it's both parties, sometimes it's
Right,
one,
right,
sometimes it's no one's, and just out of
right.
life happening, which that category
Exactly.
people rarely talk about.
Right.
But when you come from a setting like I came from, of almost 4 years of my life dedicated to a high control group, and working for free without
Mm-hmm.
pay and blood, sweat, and literal tears going into
Mm-hmm.
it, you learn the huge difference of, yeah, life does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you lose everything and have no control over that.
Yeah.
Like you could have a job and still be working it, and you could be working two jobs and still become
Mm-hmm.
homeless. That's so
Yes.
regular of occurrence nowadays
Yeah.
because economy.
Yep.
It's not anything to do with you, it's the economy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is part of life. And that's not a
Mm-hmm.
given choice. People even use
Yes.
homelessness as a choice when it's
Oh.
not a choice.
Mm-hmm. Come
Yeah,
at
there
me.
can be drug addicts and you can fall into that role of
Mm-hmm.
maybe that was a choice, but you don't know their story. So you can't say every
Exactly.
homeless person is a drug addict.
Exactly.
Just
And
like
there's
you can't
probably,
say,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just like you can't say every gay person chose to be gay.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah, I don't know about you, but that never felt like a choice to me. It just felt, it just was, just is. And that's, I like that you differentiated between emotion and choice because we can't control the way an emotion comes up. It just, they're always correct. There's no incorrect emotion. They just come up and we can't stop them from coming up. We have choice about what we do after. Okay, I'm feeling sad. What do I want to do with that information? There's just information. They're just electrical signals firing in the brain. It's just our body having a response, hormones being released, adrenaline, cortisol. So it's not something that is a choice. And I certainly have that experience too with queerness of, well, I don't know. I thought the girl in class was cute. Like I didn't know that meant anything. I wasn't choosing that over other types of relationships. It just was.
It's like with me. Mine started in kindergarten, and
Mm-hmm.
I had a crush on a girl, and I would do
Mm.
anything for her. And
Yeah.
I didn't understand the feelings I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
My mom did and was a little worried. Um, but I even tried dressing like a dude. At least she let me
Mm-hmm.
experience that
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
of dressing like a dude. Because in my cult days, they eventually said I was a male in a female's body. But because I
Mm.
had done the experimentation when I was
Yeah.
younger, it never felt comfortable. I do like
Yeah.
guy pants, but
Yeah.
that's because they are really comfortable.
Right.
But that has nothing to do with me being a dude. But I had tested those feelings and felt to
Yeah.
see if that felt right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, the clothes don't tell you who you are inside.
Mm.
You tell you who you are inside.
So
And
true.
the cult I came from, they tell you who you are inside.
Yep.
Which
Yeah.
also F's up an already very vulnerable community now more than ever. And
Yeah.
sadly, that cult is still, I should say, high control group. I'm just not
Mm-hmm.
in the habit of the high control group,
Mm-hmm.
is still in running today.
Mm-hmm.
They are still going, making
Mm-hmm.
videos,
Mm.
and people are still falling for their narrative.
Ugh. That's so awful to see that continue. But I'm glad that there's a counter movement and more information and more opportunities for people to see what it looks like on the other side.
Yes, hopefully. I know when
Mm-hmm.
I was in there, at least my breaking point was reading Sarah Berman's first article. Uh, but I had to reread it over and over again just so people can
Mm-hmm.
understand, yes, I'm autistic, so maybe it took me a little more to break through, but there was still a breakthrough. Just like right now,
Yeah.
we're seeing people, part of the MAGA movement,
Yeah.
waking up, some,
Mm-hmm.
not a lot and not fully,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but certain things break a person eventually who are in
Right.
a high control group.
Yeah.
And like I've already pointed out, even on this channel multiple times, the cult of high control group of Trump. It is,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, a cult. It has
Mm-hmm.
been said by professionals in the field themselves. Both of the biggest ones by name, Dr. Lalich and Dr. Hassan, have already said that. He even wrote a book about it. So that is valid for anyone who calls it that. It's true. It's already
Yeah.
been proven.
Yeah. And like you said, that it takes something unique to each person to have that breakthrough. And what I see a lot for people who are people pleasers is that there's some moment where either they feel internally that it's so strong that what this other person is saying is real, that doesn't feel real to them. They're like, I'm having some doubt about this person's view of reality over mine. So there's either this episode of really high intensity of this kind of disconnect, or there's another safe person who says, I actually think you're right and the other person's wrong. And so there's this again, like resetting that trust, that self-trust that I think helps the wake up process start. And sometimes it's pretty shocking of like, it's like waking up from a dream. Like, where have I been? And what does this mean about the whole universe that I'm in, the way that I interact with people, my whole world? It could be jarring.
Yeah, it's well, just from my personal experience,
Yeah.
it's very jarring because I
Yeah.
felt extremely sick to my stomach and nauseated
Yeah.
and grossed
Yeah.
out and
Yes.
extremely upset with myself because I
Oh.
did things I never thought I would do.
Mm.
People don't understand. That's why I will be doing a three-part series on
Mm-hmm.
coercive control because gaslighting
Yeah.
and everything falls into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be writing on my Medium and my Substack, all of those.
Mm-hmm.
I plan on purposely doing it all across channels
Nice.
on coercive control. And even in my memoir, I'll bring up
Mm-hmm.
that too.
Yeah.
But coercive control is so powerful to the point it literally does change your reality. Your reality is
Yes.
whatever that leader is saying,
Mm.
that one
Yeah.
person, two person, whatever that is, the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, whether you have ever met the person in person
Mm-hmm.
or only see them on television or on your computer or your phone, they
Exactly.
have influence, and that
Yes.
influence changes your reality. Those
Yeah.
words they're speaking seem like truth in the moment when you're
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And then that truth can be crumbled, but
Mm-hmm.
like you've also said, it varies per person because we're all
Right.
individuals. So
Yes.
whatever that breaking point is,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was just finding out on the other side, since Sarah Berman's first article kind of talks about what happened to the people that left.
Mm.
Twin Flames universe
Mm-hmm.
and their stories, a little more in depth on their stories, and that
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to help get more people out. So they did
Yeah.
ultimately help get me out just by that first article.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why I took part in the docu-series is I wanted to be a voice too in helping
Yes.
others get out.
Mm-hmm.
Why I bring them up a lot on this channel is I want to still
Mm-hmm.
be that voice to help
Yes.
them get out if something I say or something someone else says or something is relatable on this channel
Right.
that breaks that cord that needs to be broken.
Exactly.
That's why I
Exactly.
keep speaking up, even
Mm.
during times that are very uncertain to do so, since misinformation is okay. And
Right.
Twin Flames universe, in my personal opinion, is a huge mecca of misinformation that
Mm-hmm.
people believe, and they are also lovers of, what a shocker, another high control group that's in
Mm-hmm.
office.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they'll just double up on the
Mm-hmm.
misinformation when
Mm-hmm.
group members are in there,
Yep.
which also makes, like you've brought up, which I think is important, the knowing the truth, your truth
Oh,
versus their truth becomes
yes.
really muddled and confusing because
Absolutely.
they're going to take something you know. So, trying to think of something that's every day for people. Oh, so like eating, whether it's
Uh-huh.
gluten-free toast or regular
Yep.
toast, and putting butter or jelly on it, they'll have a
Mm-hmm.
certain order for you. So, let's put the butter on first and then the jelly.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it any other way though. You can choose
Mm.
whatever jelly you want, but you can't put it in any other way.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll have a specific way you eat it too. So just taking that small portion of your reality and just having a specific way of doing that, that automatically changes your reality. And then gaslighting portion of, no, you don't do it that way. That's not right
Mm-hmm.
because you're hurting so and so when you put the jelly on this way,
Mm-hmm.
opposite way. I was just trying to come up with
Wild.
something small and something we do
Yeah.
every day because that's what
Yeah.
they do. They take something small you do every day
Mm-hmm.
first. Like for me, part of the group, we took schedules first
Mm-hmm.
and scheduling things
Mm-hmm.
as example of a small step in changing how you do things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I am an autistic person that used to be more ADHD. I'm
Mm-hmm.
technically both, but now I'm
Mm-hmm.
more autistic than I am
Mm-hmm.
ADHD. Like, I thrive with schedules and I thrive with
Mm.
knowing what's going to happen, even though on
Mm-hmm.
my ADHD side, when I need to kick in on that, I
Yep.
can hone in on my ADHD side and be
Mm-hmm.
okay. And sometimes I do crave differences, as my other
Mm-hmm.
side is still craving boredom of schedule. The
Right.
ADHD side isn't always helpful when they do this with scheduling. But like in the past, I had trouble and was stubborn with doing a schedule. So when I
Yeah.
was in the cult, doing a schedule and changing my whole routine of that
Mm.
felt right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though I didn't want to do it because that's my ADHD side.
Mm-hmm.
Now I thrive off of scheduling, but it's on my terms. It's not on someone else
Exactly.
telling me to do it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I have a notebook that I write questions in because I need to know questions and know what someone agrees to ahead of time
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
disagrees to ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm ready. Not only am
Yep.
I making sure they're okay, but I also leave it to whoever I'm talking to
Yeah.
say, yeah, I want my questions ahead of time, or no, I don't. And if they don't,
Mm-hmm.
then I just write it for myself.
Mm-hmm. I
But
I like what you're saying about the schedule thing and that there was part of that that was helpful for you. I see this a lot with folks I work with where they want clarity about all good or all bad. Was my family all good or all bad? Is this high control group all good or all bad? Was my experience all good or all bad? And we like the order and the categories and to know. And the reality is, in most of the experiences we have, there's a little bit of both and it's muddled. And sometimes that we use that, we weaponize that against ourselves to invalidate our experience. Well, I got the schedule part out of it and that felt really good. And now I like it. And it's like, shit, wait, does that mean part of this high control group was good? Does that mean part of my family was okay, even though it was wildly abusive? And the answer is no. It just means that reality is complex. And the therapy that I was trained the most in is called dialectical behavior therapy. It's also known
oh,
as
cool.
DBT. And dialectical means that we can hold two truths that feel like opposites at the same time. Like my mom loved and adored me and was wildly emotionally abusive and hurt me a lot. Both are true. And so we spent a lot of time reconciling what does it mean that both of those are true and like how frustrating that is to not have an all or nothing clarity. We build tolerance over time withholding complexity, which our very busy minds, especially if we are neurodivergent, does not want to do. We want the clarity. Tell me what it is. So,
Well, thankfully, I have an ADHD side. So,
mhm.
yes, even though I'm autistic, I definitely do have the black and white thinking that
Yeah,
definitely led me into
yeah.
the Flames universe because high control groups are very black and white. So they
Hmm.
meet the needs a lot of neurodivergence and just everyday people in general. There's
Yeah,
something that attracts them.
yeah.
But because I'm both,
Hmm. Hmm.
ADHD is helpful for me to tune into when I need to.
Yeah,
I kind of talk like they're two opposites because they
yeah.
are literally two opposites. So
Hmm.
people seem to not get that they are in
Hmm.
fact opposite. Yes, there's places where autism and ADHD do meet, but
Sure.
not in a lot of important categories, at least
Yeah,
not for me.
yeah.
Like I use scheduling, for example.
Hmm.
Like there is so much scheduling I can do, but sometimes my ADHD side, I get bored of that.
Yes, yes.
Extremely bored. Just like
Uh-huh.
knowing, like the job I've had for 5 years, I know what I'm going into every day. And when
Yeah.
it's different, sometimes my autistic side more reacts and all I want to do is
Hmm.
scream.
Hmm.
And then sometimes my ADHD side is like, sweet, something different.
Finally, it's like your inner rebel. Like,
Yeah,
let's shake
so
things
like
up.
even in therapy sessions for
Yeah.
me, I guess when I was younger, my autistic definitely kicked in because I'm a late diagnosis. It hasn't even been
Hmm.
a full year of me being diagnosed as
Hmm.
autistic and ADHD with
Hmm.
PTSD. But again, that goes to Twin Flames universe and
Right.
just being autistic. PTSD comes into play, post-traumatic stress
Hmm.
disorder.
Hmm.
And it's already been proven that it's come from the cult too.
Hmm.
I went to a professional and
Yep.
got to hear from a professional.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I said, so black and white thinking can be, or some neurodivergence, not all, because again, spectrum. So if you're on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
autism spectrum, it's an individual as it is just for an
Yes.
everyday person who's neurotypical.
Hmm.
And why we like explaining this to my mom, she's a great example because she comes from the special education side of things.
Hmm.
And she does definitely go into black and white thinking a lot of the time
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I tried explaining to her how, yes, certain things can seem this way,
Sure.
but it's not true. So taking a stereotype of, oh, they do a certain habit, or like with me,
Hmm.
since I've been showing off my one of my fidgets a lot lately,
Hmm.
like I like soft things. So I pet
Hmm. Hmm.
and I have to have support when I know I'm doing a long social thing, but I just pet.
Hmm.
That's something I do. I do squeeze, but I haven't done that in a while. I've been more relying on soft, and
Hmm.
if I need to, I'll squeeze this. And as you can
Hmm.
tell, because I love Pokemon, one of my Pokemon. Like I like certain objects.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. Some people like hard things to
Yep.
fidget with, and not all people on the spectrum fidget.
Right.
Some people can talk really well. People haven't figured out the full spectrum or understanding. We know it's
Yeah.
genetics, just like ADHD is genetics. And sometimes when I even hear my mom doing a stereotype of an individual, I go,
Mm.
well, that might not be fully true for them.
Hmm.
Just like
Good
when
for
I'm at
you.
work, if I hear someone talking about someone, that might not be true for them. I always want to say that. I've started
Yes.
stepping up and saying that more often, but I don't
That's
always
awesome.
step up. Each individual is just that, an individual.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
spectrum is called a spectrum for a reason
Hmm.
because they haven't pinpointed every single autistic human. They've only
Yeah.
gotten mainly straight males. The queer
Yes.
community and, well, yeah, queer community and females are just
Yeah.
now getting diagnosed as
Hmm.
adults
Hmm.
and have
Yeah.
for the past 2 or 3 years now.
Waves and waves and waves. I would say most of the clients that I work with who are neurodivergent are late diagnosed. A lot of them in our work together. They're like, I think something feels different about this. And we go through some diagnostic stuff and it's like, oh, okay, yep.
There we
Let's
go.
get some clarity around this.
Well, and it's finding a professional that's not biased. Like I
Yeah.
purposely wanted a female and I
Yeah.
wanted someone who, well, I had to do out of pocket, but she was really nice anyway. She still
Hmm.
did way less. I got
Hmm.
a deal technically.
Good.
I don't know the exact amount, but it wasn't like 8,000. It was way lower than that.
Nice.
So
That's
I don't know how
awesome.
they did it. It was out of pocket. I
Yeah.
think because she also borrowed a lot of stuff from other therapists
Good.
too.
Good.
I don't know how she managed it, but either way, she made it affordable and
Good.
out of pocket affordable when I didn't have any health insurance.
Ooh, that's such a relief. It's nice to hear. I know the cost piece is so complicated, partly because of systems, structures of like insurance doesn't pay therapists very well at all. It really devalues the profession. There's a lot of misogyny in therapy. I learned something horrible called gender flight, which is kind of like white flight, of where if a group of white people believes that their area is going to be devalued by people of color coming into the area, they will leave to go to another area and the place becomes lower in value. The same thing happens professionally, where when an industry becomes dominated by women, men leave and the whole industry becomes devalued. The salaries go down, rates go down, and then there's part of this gender stereotyping where we're fed the message that we should want to do this for free or low cost, as if like I also don't have to eat. And so there's a lot of complexity, and I've wrestled with that. I have what I would consider a premium fee practice. My fees are higher than average, and 50% of my clients get a very low sliding scale rate, like a many under $100. So I have this like really broad spectrum to try to meet as many people as I can where they're at, while also feeding myself. It's really complicated, and I feel like because so much of this is systemic, I've had to figure that out with the help of really brilliant community, but it's taken a long time, and I still don't know if this is where I'm going to end up as far as the fee structure, but like always trying to figure out how can I connect with more people in a way that is sustainable financially, emotionally, for all of us.
And that's something I don't think everyone considers. I do,
Yeah.
because I tried going into this profession. I might eventually try going back. I don't know. But that there's a lot involved that you always have to consider. And I'm going to use a toxic version example, because they don't have PhDs and they are not registered. There's one person who's going for a clinical, but she doesn't actually have her PhD, which I learned you have to have a PhD. Doesn't matter where you are in America, you have to have a PhD in order to do your own individual practice. So she technically, part of Twin Flames universe, is illegally doing a clinical practice online. Anyway, I will not name her name, but that is happening on Twin Flames universe, in my personal opinion, and what I've read up on legally learning. That they are playing the coach role. I played this role too for a couple of years, but I never had that many clients. And they charge more than an average person who has a PhD. So they'll charge like 100 for a group setting of multiple people, each paying 100 per month or per week. Or I'm trying to think of other examples. Or they'll have coaching packages for like $1,000 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And these are unlicensed. Just keep in mind, unlicensed.
No regulation.
People, yeah, and they don't understand psychology. They're using the mere exercise as their psychology, which people here have just heard from an actual PhD clinical psychologist in that no. That's toxic and should be illegal. I think there isn't necessarily a law against coaching, which it would be great if there was a law that was put in place saying, hey, you can't do this unless you hold this.
Yeah.
I know a lot of professionals that have seen the docu-series have started talking about that, but I wish there was action no matter who's currently in the administration. I don't care. You can still put in your 2 cents of there should be things, because you have to follow certain rules too.
Oh yeah.
As a psychologist, you have rules.
Yep.
Well, these coaches only go off the rules of Jeff and Shalia, of what they write up.
Yikes.
There isn't any actual oversight of a professional. They aren't holding any license. They're not PhD licensed in psychology, since that's what every single one of them should be holding if they're doing this. And yeah, only one has a master's, but she is still technically, and has been doing it even before she had her master's, so illegally doing it.
Yikes.
I think in
So
like
scary.
California she's doing it. Which I read California law, and California law literally says PhD. Colorado law says the same thing. New York law says the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And all of those states are particularly strict. California is one of the strictest in the country as far as the requirements. You have to have, I think, 2,000 hours supervised by a professional who is licensed. I mean, it's like, it is a gauntlet to get a license. And then you are governed by experts who sit on a board and say, hey, we think this is safe and healthy practice, and we don't think this is. And these are the rules. And it's slow, like it's always catching up after harm has been done, but it's really trying to protect people, like you said, who are in these other situations where they're not being protected and people are causing harm and saying that they're helping. That really gets to me. That riles me up. That who people like are pitching this gaslighting, right? I'm helping you. You need this. This is what you want. You're going to feel better. And then they just tear you apart.
Well, the fact that they're using therapy practices, because certain aspects, at least of what I've heard from professionals like yourself, each in different fields, but still within the same realm, who go to people that have people overseeing Twin Flames universe, in my personal opinion, and allegedly have already lied, saying that they are overseen. They are not overseen by anyone that I know of, because one of their heads that are part of the mind alignment process, so that's the bigger portion, which they still use in the mirror exercise, the bigger portion of mental health. They do now legally say, since they've been called out multiple times, that we are not legal professionals to ask legal help. Yet, I think the lowest you pay is $15,000 for like 2 or 3 sessions, something like that. Again, they are not licensed, so that amount is huge and uncalled for. I think their biggest package is like 8,000. I could be wrong, but of what I've read on their site in the past a year ago, at least that's what it was. And they have, since being called out, have written stuff like that. And then since I called them out on certain podcasts, they've changed like their legality of saying, if you bring a child with you, it's not our fault, pretty much, trying to cover themselves, which technically just writing it down on your site doesn't cover legal standing.
Especially if you're still engaging in the behavior. It's really not enough it's what it is deflecting blame and changing the narrative, right? It's
Correct.
Like, this
and
is
that's
your
what they use writing on their website. They even have fellow coaches do the same thing of writing that.
Wow.
Like me on my YouTube channel, I purposely do this for legal purposes. I do, because this is for educational purposes. It is not for entertainment. I'm not trying to entertain you. I want you to be educated. So if you're interested in educating yourself, this is a great channel for you.
Exactly.
If you're not, I'm not here to entertain you.
Yes.
That's why I purposely, my only choice licensing on YouTube is entertainment. Anything else doesn't fall into the category, because it's not a blog. It's not anything else. So I do choose the entertainment section on YouTube, but they don't have an educational section choice.
Right.
So that's why I purposely write on all my little things, this is meant for educational purposes, not meant to offend any religion or any organization. It's not meant to.
Absolutely. Sounds like it's meant to be helpful, and that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, because on the Twin Flames Universe site, like you said, it's just deflecting. They also have written, like, if we choose to kick you out for being this way, it's literally just them trying to cover their butts for kicking people out of their community if they don't like them or agree with them, because that's what they've always done and still do. With their recent videos, they just tried to change that narrative by pretendingly accepting negative feedback. But if it went too deep, I saw when they went too deep and questioned even further, they didn't have a reaction, a reply, or anything.
Then we see the cracks.
Yeah, you can always break the cracks. If you see the one where narration isn't being controlled by our current administration, you'll see where cracks start opening. And you'll see the insanity, honestly, for what it is. If you see the truth, the real videos that have not been edited or have not changed the narrative in any way. That's what I always wish people were seeing, because those who are part of the current toxic, deadly, already has been proven deadly movement, which is known as MAGA, in my personal opinion. They have certain videos, even on TikTok, like algorithm on TikTok is completely changed. IG is changed, Facebook is changed, YouTube has changed, algorithms have changed to meet the needs of straight white people, males specifically. So most of your narrative you will see, if you make it fully to the algorithm, which most of the time they accidentally put you on it. Like on TikTok, I'm partially there right now, and it's torture seeing that narrative.
Oh gosh, I bet.
Like of Doge allegedly trying to get out the bad and give us back money, when in reality they're just giving Elon more money than he already makes more than the average human every day anyways.
Yes.
So yeah, seeing the narrative they're seeing though is helpful too to get perspective. So I
Yeah.
do highly recommend people see that perspective just to see, would you agree if you were to see this and not know the
Right.
truth?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that's what I feed myself of if I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing this for the first time. I actually
Mm-hmm.
once almost fell for some of the narrative I've been seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
It
then I
pulls
went,
at
oh, it's a
emotions.
lie.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's very convincing. They know. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's just propaganda, which I actually
Right.
did a full video on how propaganda can. Well, I used Wicked because I love Wicked. I used the
Mm-hmm.
actual film Wicked as
Mm-hmm.
an example, not the book, because that's completely different and
They're
way more
different.
political.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I used the film and I used Alphaba because she is an
Mm-hmm.
activist in the
Mm-hmm.
story. But her narrative is changed around to be the Wicked Witch of the West that
Yes.
we all know her as.
Yeah.
But that was a narrative that was switched on her that wasn't true.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's how powerful propaganda and narration is. You can
Mm-hmm.
literally change the whole perspective in reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all got to know the Wicked Witch of the West as the Wicked Witch of the West, not a
Absolutely.
animal activist.
Right.
So human rights activist, I count her as in
Mm-hmm.
modern day. She would be a
Mm-hmm.
human rights activist.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully she didn't actually die, so that's always a plus.
Yeah. I'll take that.
Yeah, well, spoiler. Sorry, I said spoiler. So I apologize for anyone if you made it this far. So I apologize. And actually, I was wondering, because I have fun asking everyone this, what's
Mhm.
a typical day for you look like?
I think I used to really like a schedule and have kind of set expectations. What I've done as I've gotten more and more connected to my inner wisdom is to have more and more parts of my day that are flexible, where I can check in with myself about what I need in the moment. And so I start my day that way. I don't do anything for the first 2 hours that I'm awake. No work. Not allowed. And so I have coffee, I have breakfast, I'll do some Sudoku, I'll check my email maybe. But I really try to go slow, read a book, look at birds, whatever. Then I usually see a couple clients and I give myself a very long lunch break too, maybe 2 hours. Sometimes I go to a coffee shop, which is like my main way of getting out of the house as somebody from home, and I'll work on stuff for work, marketing, documentation, come back, do a couple more clients, and then kind of figure out what feels right for the evening, whether that's being outside with my dog, who's here sleeping next to me while we do this interview, or going out with friends, or going to see a show, whatever it might be. So it's pretty quiet. I'm very introverted. I give a lot of energy in this work. So my downtime, I like to have solo time, quiet time, slow time.
I like that. It sounds very healthy. Actually, if you do end up watching Tabby's video, she goes over
Mm-hmm.
her day too, and she wears
Mm-hmm.
many hats because she's also
Oh,
a forensic psychologist.
oh, wow. Yeah.
And she also does working with, well, people such as myself and such as
Yeah.
herself too,
Yeah.
ex-cult members. And I think though, for her at least, I hope that more ex-members that are queer go for
Mm-hmm.
her because she is
Yeah.
queer too, just like you.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping
Yes.
more people, more queer people, see this and hopefully go to you too. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I have on my channel, I'll just announce that here. I have a full section that is mental health. So anytime I interview anyone in the mental health field, whether they're queer or not, will be in the mental health section, and you'll have all the things in the description saying, just like for here too, check out all the links to Dr. Shannon down below. You will have links to go check out, or even just to view their website, or if you want to get in contact with them, I bet on their website will have a contact there to contact them. You get a little, I guess, preview through the interview of who they are and if you're comfortable with them. And if you want to just experience one-on-one like I am right now, then definitely please reach out to Dr. Shannon or even Tabby, though
Absolutely.
I think Tabby just goes by Tabby and not Dr. Tabitha. I don't know. I know her as Tabby, so I call her Tabby. So don't go off of me with Tabby. Thought that was important to announce to anyone
Mhm.
watching. And if you made it this far, thank you so much. I'm going to randomly do a like and subscribe because the more the better. And please share. Mental health is important. The more you share, the merrier it is, and more likely Dr. Shannon will get unique clients too. So please, if you like this video, like, subscribe, share with a friend, family, even enemy. Share with an enemy. Share with someone you think needs mental health and
I love
wants
that.
not misinformation, I guess.
I wish great mental health to all of my enemies and your enemies and the enemies of everyone watching. I think it will help heal us all if we all take a little bit more care of our minds and bodies.
Yes. Like, even actually in one of my past interviews, we actually had a full funny conversation just talking about hate comments in general. And I said,
Mm.
no, please say what you want. I am fine with hate comments. Certain hate comments, yeah, I get rid of. If it's like too harsh, I will absolutely get rid of. But if it's just a personal opinion and not fully in hate, I'll let it stand and not even try to take it down on my YouTube channel. But not enough people honestly leave comments. I
Yeah.
rarely get comments, and comments help boost the
Right.
channel.
Yeah. No matter if they're positive or not.
Exactly. So if you have a comment or a question below, please leave it. And I don't know if Shannon, if you are on YouTube, but if you are, I know some people like to also be on the channel to answer some questions. So if you are on, are you on?
I actually just recorded my first video last week, maybe.
Oh,
So
okay.
technically, yes, but
Yes.
we'll see if it lasts.
Okay. Well, if you so choose, you can reply to comments too if you want to. Like, I have one person from the app that we're from who will be replying to questions personally to her and her business. So
Beautiful. I'll keep
if
an
you
eye out.
feel inclined, if anyone leaves a comment, which isn't that highly likely, but if someone does, Dr. Shannon can reply if it has anything psychology. I will not reply to that except saying thank you for watching, because I don't feel it's my place. I don't know what other questions I had for you because I'm on the wrong page.
Okay, I think we covered a lot. We got
I
to
think
an
so
hour.
too. Oh yeah, exactly an hour too. Well,
We can
then
hang
I
out.
will do the out. Well, thank you, one, for being here and doing this interview with me. I appreciate you. Please, people, check out comments below. Like, subscribe, embrace your truth, tell your story. You have a story to tell. I have a story to tell. Why don't we all just tell our story? Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you,
Peace.
Jessi.
And thank you. I used to always have the little blurb after the intro thing I have on mine. I used to have a little thing that said exactly the same thing that says at the bottom of my YouTube channel of